By the end of this decade, many European countries you've known your whole life might be gone. It might sound unreal, but for some places in Europe, it's becoming a reality. We've gone through government data, international reports, and reports from the EU, and what we found is shocking. Some European countries may not survive the next few years. Internal divisions are getting more violent, and many economies are struggling to survive. This isn't just about politics. It's about people's lives, their futures, and the very land they call home. In this video, we're looking at 10 European countries that might not exist in the near future, and the real reasons for it. Like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. 10. Moldova. Moldova might still show up on the map, but for how much longer? This tiny country, squeezed between Ukraine and Romania, is moving toward a decision that could erase it as an independent nation altogether. More and more Moldovans are trying to unite it with neighboring Romania. They speak the same language, share a common history, and were once part of the same country before World War II. Romania represents something Moldova has never really had: stability, EU membership, and a stronger economy. Support for reunification has been quietly growing, especially as Moldova struggles with corruption, poverty, and the ever-present threat from Russia. The war in Ukraine has only made things worse, reminding Moldovans how exposed they really are. Then there's Transnistria, a breakaway region on the eastern edge of the country, backed by Russian forces. Moldova has little control over it, and that just fuels the feeling that the country is being pulled apart. It's not hard to imagine Moldova choosing to dissolve itself, peacefully, by joining with Romania, not through war or collapse, but through a quiet vote. 9. Belgium. Belgium, known for its chocolate and political complexity, is at a breaking point. It's a country divided, not just by language, but by deep-rooted cultural and political differences. The northern region, Flanders, is home to the Dutch-speaking Flemish people, while the southern region, Wallonia, is dominated by French speakers. These two regions have had an uneasy coexistence for years, with each side feeling the other doesn't understand their needs or respect their identity. Over the years, tensions have flared over political representation, tax distribution, and economic policies. The idea of a split has been gaining traction, particularly with the growing rise of separatist parties in Flanders. It's not just a matter of language. There are real economic disparities. Flanders is wealthier and more industrialized, while Wallonia has a more struggling economy. If these divides continue to widen, Belgium could face a future where it no longer exists as a single nation. In fact, Belgium has already faced several political crises where forming a government took months. If political leaders can't find a way to bridge these gaps, it's possible that Flanders and Wallonia might go their separate ways, leaving Belgium as a broken entity. 8. Cyprus. The island nation is split between Greek Cypriots in the south and Turkish Cypriots in the north. This division started in 1974 when Turkey invaded the northern part of the island after a Greek-backed coup. Since then, Cyprus has been a symbol of political and ethnic conflict, with a heavily militarized border cutting the country in half. The island is technically still one country, but its two halves have very different realities. The Greek Cypriot South is an EU member, while the Turkish Cypriot North is only recognized by Turkey. The issue of reunification has been an ongoing struggle, with talks coming and going over the years. But the situation isn't improving. The international community, including the EU and UN, has tried to broker peace, but each attempt has failed. The economic and political differences between the two regions are enormous, and the distrust between the two sides is deep. As long as these divisions persist, Cyprus could very well remain a divided nation, or in the worst case, see its northern part become fully absorbed into Turkey. If the stalemate continues, Cyprus may be on its way to becoming an even more fragmented land. 7. Georgia. Georgia, sitting at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, has always had a tough time holding on to its territory and sovereignty. The country has fought long and hard to maintain its independence, but it faces multiple threats from within and without. Georgia's two breakaway regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, declared independence in the early 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and these regions have been under Russian influence ever since. While the rest of Georgia is internationally recognized as one country, the de facto states in the breakaway areas are supported by Russia, making it impossible for Georgia to regain full control. These regions have their own governments, military forces, and close ties to Moscow. This puts Georgia in an incredibly vulnerable position. It's not just the internal conflict. Georgia also has to deal with the worrying presence of Russia, which has shown no signs of backing down from its aggressive expansion in the region. The situation is further complicated by ethnic tensions and the ongoing tug-of-war between pro-Western Georgians and those who prefer closer ties with Russia. If Russia continues its territorial ambitions, Georgia could end up either losing more of its land or finding itself stuck in an endless conflict with no clear resolution. 6. Belarus. Belarus, often referred to as Europe's last dictatorship, has been under the tight control of President Alexander Lukashenko for decades. His regime has clung to power through repression, manipulation, and a tight grip on the media and the economy. The country has faced massive protests in recent years, particularly after the controversial 2020 elections, where Lukashenko claimed victory despite widespread accusations of fraud. These protests were met with violent crackdowns, and the people of Belarus have increasingly shown their dissatisfaction with the current regime. Meanwhile, Belarus's relationship with Russia has only deepened, with Lukashenko allowing Russian influence to grow stronger in exchange for political and economic support. This has left many Belarusians feeling trapped between two forces, a corrupt and oppressive government on one side, and a more powerful neighbor in Russia on the other. While Belarus has managed to survive as a state under Lukashenko's leadership, the growing unrest and potential for external intervention, either by Russia or the West, could push the country into collapse. Belarus might not be able to stay intact much longer, especially if internal opposition continues to rise and external pressures mount. 5. North Macedonia. North Macedonia has been through more identity crises than most people realize. It only recently settled a decades-long dispute with Greece over its name, finally becoming North Macedonia in 2019. But even that didn't fully solve things. The country still faces serious internal tensions that could put its unity at risk. Ethnic Albanians make up about a quarter of the population, and their calls for greater rights, and in some cases, even autonomy, have sparked real political instability. Many Albanians in the country don't feel fully represented, and some openly talk about joining with neighboring Albania instead. In a region where national lines have shifted so many times over the years, it's not hard to imagine it happening again. Meanwhile, North Macedonia has struggled to move forward economically, and frustrations about slow progress toward European Union membership have only added to the tension. If these problems aren't addressed soon, and in a meaningful way, North Macedonia could face serious internal division that might tear it apart. It's a fragile country in a fragile part of Europe, and one big political shock could be all it takes for the cracks to finally split wide open. 4. Kosovo. Kosovo is the youngest country in Europe, and also one of the most fragile. It declared independence from Serbia in 2008, but more than 15 years later, not everyone agrees it's even a real country. Serbia still refuses to recognize Kosovo, and so do several other nations, including Russia and China. That means Kosovo exists in this strange in-between place, technically independent, but still surrounded by threats and uncertainty. Inside Kosovo, there are more problems. While the majority of the population is ethnic Albanian, there's a sizable Serbian minority, mostly in the north, that doesn't recognize the government in Pristina and often clashes with it. Tensions regularly flare up, and it wouldn't take much to push the country into serious conflict again. NATO peacekeepers are still on the ground, which says a lot about how unstable things really are. On top of all that, Kosovo faces high unemployment, corruption, and economic struggles that push many of its young people to leave. Kosovo's survival depends on keeping the peace with Serbia, maintaining international support, and solving internal divisions. If any of those pillars fall, Kosovo could be in real trouble, and its future as a functioning, unified country could vanish just as quickly as it appeared. 3. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has been slowly unraveling, and few people know how serious it really is. Brexit was the first big crack. When the UK voted to leave the European Union in 2016, it triggered a wave of division, not just politically, but geographically. Scotland, which voted overwhelmingly to stay in the EU, immediately began pushing for a second independence referendum, and this time, it might actually happen. The Scottish people increasingly feel like their future is being controlled by a government in London they didn't vote for. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, Brexit reignited tensions that many thought had been put to rest. The peace that followed the Good Friday Agreement is showing signs of strain, especially with new trade barriers between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. There's growing talk of Irish unification, something that once seemed impossible. Wales, too, has seen a quiet but noticeable rise in independent sentiment. What's left is a country held together more by history than unity. If Scotland votes to leave, and Northern Ireland follows, it wouldn't be the first time a once mighty union broke apart, but it might be one of the most symbolic. The UK isn't just fighting over politics, but about its existence. 2. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina is still haunted by a war that ended over 25 years ago. It may be one country on paper, but in practice, it's deeply divided, politically, ethnically, and emotionally. The country is made up of two main entities, the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, mostly Muslim Bosniaks and Catholic Croats, and Republika Srpska, dominated by Orthodox Serbs. These divisions were built into the peace deal that ended the war, but over time, they've hardened instead of healing. Republika Srpska's leadership has openly talked about breaking away and forming closer ties with Serbia. That's not just talk. It's backed by political actions, blockades, and growing hostility toward the central government. At the same time, the country is paralyzed by a political system that gives each group a veto over national decisions, making progress almost impossible. Most young people leave because they see no future in a country so stuck in the past. If Republika Srpska does try to secede, and it very well might, it could plunge the region back into chaos. The international community would face another crisis, and Bosnia as we know it could cease to exist. It's a country held together by international agreements, not genuine unity, and those agreements are wearing thin. 1. Ukraine. Ukraine is at the top of this list for a reason. It's fighting for its survival right now. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, the country has been under constant attack, with cities destroyed, civilians killed, and millions forced to flee. And this war isn't just about territory, it's about existence. Russia doesn't just want a piece of Ukraine. It wants to erase Ukrainian identity altogether. Even if Ukraine manages to hold the line militarily, the scars left behind could take generations to heal. Eastern regions like Donetsk and Luhansk have already been under Russian-backed separatist control for years. The longer this war drags on, the more likely it is that parts of Ukraine may never return to Ukrainian control. On top of that, the war has pushed the economy to the brink and displaced a massive part of the population. Rebuilding will take time, money, and stability, three things Ukraine doesn't have right now. If peace comes, it may come with a price, a smaller Ukraine, a changed Ukraine, or a divided one. If one European country is in real danger of disappearing or being permanently reshaped, it's Ukraine.